Today, I'm going to interview George Sunderland from SEO Careers, who recruits for people like Charles Flo and Whitepress. And today, you're going to learn how to save thousands of hours by hiring SEOs, the easy step-by-step process for recruiting and finding the best people, plus what an enabler actually is and where to find them. Let's get in. So, where's the best place to start with hiring?
A job description. Start by making a job description. Get your list of requirements, whether it's the tools that they use, the usage of AI, whatever it may be. You can use ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever you want to use. Just create a job description and start from there. You're going to change it. You're going to chop and change requirements as they come. You might see after interviewing, you might see things that you like and that you don't like in the process, but it all starts with just getting a document together. If you're a larger consultancy, HR can do this for you. If you're maybe a smaller business, you use ChatGPT because it's really simple, and they're really good at kicking out that kind of stuff.
One of the things that I find is quite often people don't know where to start when it comes to hiring, especially with SEO, because there's so many different things you can do, right? Like you could get someone to manage WordPress, to write content, to build backlinks. Typically, I start with a time audit and I'm like, I'm spending all my time over here. If I just get someone doing that, I want to save 8% of my time. Like, what do you think are the most valuable hires in SEO?
I think on that, I think a virtual assistant or a personal assistant can be really important, especially if you're a successful consultant and you're looking to transition into a multi-man agency. Having someone that can do the bookings for you, manage your calendar, organize your emails. I feel like from a time consumption perspective, that's an easy way for you to focus on things that are more important from a strategic level. And to use like the military language, you use the PA would do the tactical stuff on the ground level. And then you as a business owner or manager with that person looking into all the tactical stuff, you can be more strategic, which is super important for like medium to long-term goals. How am I going to increase revenue next year rather than next week?
Yeah. One of the things that I see as well, a lot of SEOs is like they'll get a virtual assistant and they'll try it and then it will go terribly and they'll be like, oh, I tried that and I've given up on trying to get a virtual assistant because they can't do it as good as me. What would you say to that?
That is, you'll have this with every single person or position you hire for. You could be hiring your CMO or someone to, even a CEO to completely take the business off you so you can go on holiday 360 days a year. There are always going to be people that kind of don't work together. Maybe the expectations are set incorrectly, but yeah, keep trying. Don't lose faith in recruiting people. It's a really important part of building a business. VAs and PAs, you do run the risk of it being quite a broad position. If you recruit a PA from, say, a corporate background, their expectations are super high with regards to like the process in place or how rigid the documentation is. They know where to look for learning resources on their day-to-day job. Sometimes that might not work if you're a small agency. So it's usually just a mismatch of kind of expectations, which is where using a recruiter can help out. You can remove the 95% of candidates look good, but when they get on the phone, you talk about their day-to-day work, it just isn't quite right. But yeah, don't lose faith. Keep going. If you recruit a second one and they're not right, you need to take a step back and look at what the job description is, what you're asking them to do. Do you need a VA or a PA for that? And yeah, it's your problem. If the second one is wrong, it's definitely the problem of the recruiter or the person recruiting rather than the candidate themselves. You always get that one candidate that just didn't work out. They're not super up for it. Maybe they've got their own things happening in their personal life and the job didn't quite work out at the time. One thing that can mitigate that kind of problem is hiring from someone who has experience in the industry you work in. We hired someone earlier this year from one agency into another. The amount of value adding that person's been able to do in the immediate instance has been amazing for the owner of that business. And the way we went around reducing the risk there was finding someone who worked at a similar sized agency with similar services. The only difference was the tools that they use for project management and whatnot, which is easy to learn.
Yeah, that makes sense. One thing I would say as well, and we'll come on to the actionable ways in terms of like how to find people, where to find them, how to interview them, etc. We'll come on to that in a minute. One of the things that I would say as well, and you touched on it briefly, is the mindset has to be if that person doesn't work out, it's not them. It's 100% my fault, right? If I've put the wrong person in the wrong position and they're not good at their job, like I tend to find like people quite often blame someone else, especially when they're not used to recruiting, but it all falls on you, right? It's all your fault.
Yeah, it's literally your job to get it right. And that's why you need a rigid interview process. And you set expectations. When I say that, it's not all the good things. Set expectations around the bad things. By the way, every couple of months, we've got this one client that's really difficult to work with, and they do put a lot of pressure on. It's just give them some insight into the negative aspects of the job. And they're far more likely to be able to handle it well once they do come on board. But you're right. It comes down to everything that you do before hiring that person. And expectation setting, you'll probably hear me say it a lot during the call, but it is just about, this is what you're going to be doing. This is our expectations of you. These are the tools we use. These are the bad days that you might have, but these are the really good days you might have as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I don't really do that, but I should. Whereabouts do you look for candidates? What are the best places to try and look around for candidates? Is it typically like Upwork or Fiverr, or where do you recommend?
Yeah, so you got the Upwork and Fiverr are great. They're really great platforms for looking for contractors or people that are going to work on an hourly basis, and you need them for a couple of weeks here or there. Once we start talking about 3 to 6 months or even beyond full-time permanent positions, you do have to go down the traditional route of posting adverts onto LinkedIn is the main one, but you have Indeed. In the UK, we have like Job Site, Monster. You have to manage the spend because each one of these sites will charge you X amount of money to post per job. But for the longer term positions, go to those job sites. LinkedIn is great. I'd say that LinkedIn's foothold currently in the job getting market is massive. And the fact that people also use LinkedIn sometimes to do other stuff, socialize, check out new trend, look at Julian's new video on whatever AI platforms coming out. It's almost a byproduct of them being on the platform. They get to see the opportunities that you post, which isn't as common as, say, you go on Indeed, you're only there for one reason. LinkedIn gets that kind of passive talent market, which is really powerful.
Yeah, because I guess the A players, like, they're not just chilling on Indeed or Upwork waiting for work to come to them, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's the headhunting, which is hard and it's difficult for internal teams to do, where you can really go direct to people in the space. Usually it requires a bigger budget. Obviously, it costs more to recruit people that aren't looking for new jobs. It's obvious. But yeah, you can go through a process of even approaching people on Twitter, on Facebook, whatever it may be. You go through a kind of direct headhunting approach. That's more for leadership positions. You'll see that style. If we need a chief something officer that has worked at a link building company or whatever it may be, an SEO agency, you're likely to have a list of 10 to 20 candidates in the right region that you need to go directly to. Anything lower than that, you're looking at networking. We have our website, which helps a lot, our database of previous candidates, but also just doing all the right things. Make sure you're posting the jobs, it's going out on the social media, and try and increase as much reach as you can.
I get a lot of people from, say, YouTube or Twitter, and they see me posting actively about SEO. And they're like, by the way, if you have any jobs going, I'd really like to work for you. I think personal branding helps a lot to attract candidates as well. How would you filter those? Would you go down the same process of, okay, an interview and that sort of thing, test job?
Yes, it would be the same process, but we would highlight their social media presence in the process of introducing them to a client. Quite often it can be the difference between two candidates. People love the idea of hiring influencers. It's a massive topic. We're in marketing. Overall, that's the gist of everything. If you can hire someone who has a presence, they understand new technologies, you're not just hiring a doer then, you're actually hiring someone who can bring ideas to the table, someone who has their eye on the space, someone who can identify opportunities and new streams of revenue. And it's a great way of doing things. What you'll notice though is that people have a really good social media presence. They might be in the contracting or consulting game already. So it might be difficult to get them into a full-time position compared with just hiring them for 3 months on the basis of delivering on a certain project or transforming the business in some kind of way.
And you mentioned before as well about like when you're trying to recruit, for example, lower level jobs, like for example, a virtual assistant, you would usually use like Upwork or networking. How would you network to get those? Would you like be dropping people that you know a message and asking them, or posting on Facebook groups? What do you recommend there?
From a recruitment perspective, the networking would be you do a market map of all of the businesses in a region. You would identify the candidates, quite literally get in touch with them directly. Every business in the world has first name dot second name at businessname.com or .co.uk, something like that. You can find these people's emails. You can get through to them directly. From a networking perspective, we do like to use, say, shares, people that are on social media that are, my friend is looking for a role and it's maybe a trusted candidate, someone that we've placed before, or someone that we know is quite good, because in recruitment, there is an element of it's not what you know, it's who to a degree. In every line of life and work, that's the case. So to have some kind of recommendation from someone reputable, or even someone who just maybe works in a similar space in a competing business, it can go a long way. A lot of the interview process is just building up that trust. The more networking you do, the more kind of trust you have from the word go.
All right. So far, we've talked about how to start, which is basically create a job description. You can get ChatGPT to help you. We've talked about some of the mindset hacks for recruiting and also where to recruit, aka LinkedIn, socials, Upwork, networking with other people in the industry. What What do you do once you've got those candidates, and how do you source them? Do you, for example, I've used, for example, like Dynamite Jobs before, and they'll put everything into an Airtable, so it's really easy to see like the candidates and that sort of thing. Like, how would you recommend collecting the data and the applications from candidates?
Yeah, I would go super base. A lot of these job sites have built-in kind of platforms already where they'll rank based on relevance, keyword frequency. If I need a SEMrush expert, they're super simple search engine solutions. So they'll put on the top of the list of candidates that have applied someone who's mentioned SEMrush the most. After that, I would go into a manual process where I'd have a list of interview questions that are critical to someone getting the job. And I would have someone reaching out to those people. There is a way you can do it by text and email, but it's not recommended. In reality, you do want someone who's calling them, interviewing them, figuring out their level of communication, how they speak about their projects. You've got different methods of answering certain questions. Are they quite thorough in their work? Are they a delegation person? Or are they in management? Maybe they're not quite a doer. They're more of a manager and they allow people to be successful rather than doing it themselves. But yeah, I would have a list of kind of like even 10 questions, and I'd go through the list of the top 10 to 20 candidates and interview them based on those questions and then rank them on how they answer. By that point, you're looking at narrowing this shortlist down to the top 5 people. And I think once you've got 5 candidates, you're in a perfect place to start a process. You get 5 interviews in the diary. There's the rule of averages in recruitment, where if you have 5 candidates, you deliver 3 more the following week, that you will get to a scenario where that job is placed and filled. It's a mathematical probability at that point. So yeah, in that kind of way, that's how I'd rank them.
Would you recommend, for example, once you've interviewed them and you've asked all these interview questions, would you recommend like putting them on a trial basis, like get a feel for what it's like to work with that person?
Sometimes, yeah, I think that there's a way to utilize probation periods in a way that can be conducive to giving out those trial periods and not having people do shadowing. Maybe they already have a job, which is going to be most candidates. If you offer someone who already has a job, a trial shift, as you used to call it back in the pop washing days, you get into a scenario where the acceptance rate would be so low that you'd be creating more work for yourself. I think there's no harm in setting expectations with candidates that this is what you're expected to deliver. This is what we're going to do to help you get to the level where you can deliver that. But we will have to remove it, which is, it's not a nice thing to do, but I think there is already a utility there to use probationary periods to make sure you're getting the right candidate. Apart from a trial shift, I'd always go for case study, some form of presentation. We have the benefit of working in a space where everything is measurable and there are percentage increases in X, Y, and Z over this period of time. I would ask a candidate to come with a presentation, what the problem was at the start, how they attacked the problem, what the result was, and break down all of those steps. And you'll find within half an hour of someone presenting to you whether you want to offer them a job. And you won't just be studying how good they are at SEO. It will be, what are they like as a person? Can they eventually, if I was to grow my business further down the line, could I put them in a senior position? Were they eloquent in how they spoke? Obviously, it doesn't relate to every job, but I'd go for like a case study or some way they can demonstrate things and give them the stage.
Yeah, one of the things you find out quickly, in my own experience, is when you hire someone for SEO, quite often they think they know SEO,
Yeah.
but they actually don't. And sometimes it's like easier to start with someone on a fresh slate who's never done it before and just train them from scratch.
Yes, I think there's loads of value in them. To build people to have a blank slate and someone who has the right attributes, but you can then forge them in the way that you work. And like you say, give them a path or a route of actually becoming a proper SEO. I think that's the way forward. I think those junior people are what make businesses. And you hear about the current CEO of this giant company started out as a janitor. You always hear those kinds of stories. And that always comes from the fact that they were able to build this individual into exactly what they needed rather than trying to find a round peg for a square hole from a different business that you can chip away and try and fit into that mold.
100%. Do you do any sort of like personality testing or like the disc or anything like that?
Not at the moment. It's something that we've been looking at. It's only as good as the people that believe in it. And it's probably more viable for the more junior positions where you are looking at a blank slate and you need just some kind of quantifiable, something to judge them on or assess them on. I think it's a good thing. The types of positions that we look at, it would be mid to senior, beyond that level of what personality type are you? What businesses have you worked at? What's the reputation of that business? What's your portfolio look like? But I think for those junior roles, there's always some kind of way that you can interview them based on their personality type. Are they more dominant or are they more passive, like introverted, extroverted? I think it's a good thing. But I also think it's something you will figure out in the interview process. I think as much as possible, you should be speaking to people, whether it's on video or face to face or on the phone, and you will come to your own conclusions about all of that sort of stuff.
Do you have any rules for hiring? Like for me, for example, when I hire, I typically look at that person and I'm like, they've got to bring a 5-to-1 or 10-to-1 ROI. Whatever we pay them, they have to bring a certain amount back. Do you have any sort of set rules like that?
Not, not really. It depends massively on the job. Obviously, if you're looking for someone who's in account management, new business sales, yes, we need to look at their previous achievement and make sure that they are delivering back on the investment. If you're looking for a personal assistant, I don't think there's a scenario where you can look at the value there, unless maybe you told up your hourly rate and you looked at how much that could reduce the time that you spend on booking flights and hotels, whatever. But yeah, it would depend massively on the role. It's something we can do. One thing that we like to look at, and obviously because you're paying to use a recruiter when you work with us, tenure. If you have 6 months here, 1 year there, and you find yourself in a scenario where you're changing jobs quite frequently, a lot of managers will see that as a red flag and say, I don't want to replace this person in 6 to 12 months. That's not in the plans. But no, we don't really have a rule around return on investment, or because it depends on the business you're recruiting for as well. We can recruit it for 20 different businesses at a time, and it would vary too much to install it as a rule.
One of the other things that I hear is probably the biggest cliche in the recruiting world is like just hire A players. But what do you define as an A player? Like for me, for example, is someone who can hit their KPIs. We'll set them a quarterly goal. We know they're going to hit it, and that makes them an A player because they always get results. What do you see it as?
An A player, yeah. Usually it's someone who delivers, they overachieve, they aspire to be as successful as possible. Someone who wants to scale as well. Someone who wants to progress their career as much as possible. Because that having ambition is what makes you an A player. in 99% of the cases. But I do think there are sometimes value adds for the people that are there to, how would I put this? They're there to deliver on what's asked of them and then go home. And they don't want to be promoted. They're happy in their job. It's not a position you got to replace or hire for in 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You have people in the office that fit really well into the jobs they have. Maybe that really suits their work-life balance. They're delivering on what they need to do day to day. But when it comes to, there's an opportunity or a promotion, they're not really fussed. Every office has that person that's an A player for, not because of their performance, because of the effects that they have in the office environment. There might be someone who's really good for the culture of the business. And that type of person can be invaluable because it allows you to retain the A players far more. So yeah, I think that's where the personality type thing does come in. I think you do need a mixture of people that are fitting into these different spaces, the introvert, the extrovert, because you're trying to create a culture. Sometimes you can have that Wolf of Wall Street style. Everyone's got to be an S tier plus player. Sometimes the 9 to 5er, someone who just makes the office better, can be an A player too. Someone you're really desperate to retain.
Yeah, that's it. I think there's some positions where in my company, I can see there's some positions where if that person just wants to stay there for 5 or 10 years, totally fine with me. Like they do a good job at where they're at. And also like sometimes like in a lot of businesses where it's that up and out situation where they're constantly going up and up in terms of getting promoted until the point where they can't do that job anymore and they have to get out. And I think that's really sad. It's better to have someone who is amazing at that job and can do it consistently for 5 or 10 years, and then we can recruit all the parts around it to keep growing.
It's like every football team has their Cristiano Ronaldo, but they've also got their Michael Carrick, haven't they? They've got
Yeah, yeah,
someone
yeah.
who gets in the middle, does all the basics, and then it allows the A players to do what they do best. And I think when you are building a business, you need to structure it like a football team, rugby team, whatever sport you like. You're going to have those different types of people. Obviously, everyone wants the Cristiano Ronaldo, but everyone needs the Michael Carrick.
This is the way that I saw it. It felt like when I was assembling the team, particularly when I was hiring a lot, it was like playing championship manager, where you're like trying to put the people in the right places and get the right deals and that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun. I think you can turn it into a game.
Yeah, 100%. And you will, it's having a good team, a stable team where people want to stay. It becomes a lot more than just a business. You do get into a scenario where you've built something that's, it's changing people's lives. They have their mental health's in a far better place because you've built the right business. They're not in a scenario where they're worried about being sacked tomorrow. The A player gets their opportunity to earn as much money as they want to and overachieve. Maybe the more stable kind of mid players, they have their jobs. They know what they need to deliver to make sure that they're there in 2 years' time, in 3, 5 years' time. And once you build that kind of environment, I think it should be a real source of pride because that's by definition a stable business. It's the stable businesses that last.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, we've talked about how to create the job description, the mindset, recruiting, collecting all the applications, and also filtering and hiring. Once you've actually hired someone, how do you monitor their performance and what's the best way to manage them? Like for me, for example, we do one-to-one KPI calls, just 30 minutes a pop. We run through their targets and whether they're close to hitting them or not. And then I also do like a weekly feedback tracker for each member of my team. And it's like, right, here's 3 things you can improve for each team member. What do you recommend?
I think that's a good thing. Have your targets, have your incentives, give the people that are hungry an opportunity to earn more money, overachieve, etc. I think there's the classic kind of 3-month review is always a good thing to do. When you're talking about targets for the business, I think it's also a good thing to talk about personal targets. What do you want to do in your personal life this year or next year? Are you looking to get a mortgage? Do you want to buy a new car? What's motivating you? How can I help you as your employer get to your personal goals? And then create some kind of system where to get to that personal goal, they're delivering for the business, make it a 2-way street. I think the KPIs and all that sort of stuff is good, but don't focus on doing it too often and too much to the point where it does feel like a 1-way street. I think where employment is now beyond just earning money for a lot of people. It is about the quality of life balance. Are they happy at the end of the day? That's the number one metric. Will people stay at the business you work with or that you manage? Are they happy? By doing that, I think if you create the review process or the way of meeting with them on a regular basis, make sure it's designed around you helping them as much as them helping you. But yeah, I'd go for a meeting every 3 months. And then if you do have the middle management or maybe team leads, I'd focus on them doing the week to week stuff. Notice last week, for example, you didn't make as many calls or you weren't online as much. How's everything going? Want to make sure you're all right, that sort of thing. Then from a higher level, make sure every 3 months you have the things where we need you to do this over the next 3 months. This is how you need to do it. Here's what the 3 months after is looking like. But yeah, communication as much as possible.
Do you have any red flags to avoid when you're filtering out candidates?
To avoid in the sense of,
Like, for example, I remember Matt Dixie did a training on hiring, and he was saying, like, for example, you should always ask for 3 references from an employer, because sometimes if you can't get them, number one, they're either they don't have the experience or they don't have the contacts. But at the same time as well, sometimes you'll jump on a call with some of these references and you learn things you would never learn from the interview process.
yeah, references is always a good thing. Any red flags? I think you look at the tenure again. If someone has been somewhere for a couple of months, or you know that they've had a permanent opportunity and they'd only been there for 8 months, something like that, ask them what happened in the reference process. If you can find out what happened, even better. But yeah, you can usually tell by looking at someone's CV that if they've been in a business for 5+ years, whoever recruited them previously saw a lot of value in them and did as much as they could to retain them. And I say this to candidates as well. Don't move jobs too often. Sometimes you've got to go a few months, 6, 12 months, 2 years, and you might have accepted the wrong job or you don't like your manager or X, Y, and Z. Just try and build up some tenure, make sure that you are delivering in your day-to-day job, and it will do wonders for your CV. Your interview success rate will go through the roof. The amount of people that message me, they go, oh, help me out. I'm not getting many interviews. Here's my CV. There's nothing actually wrong with the CV whatsoever. It's just the fact that managers don't like them because they've changed jobs too often. So yeah, references is the biggest one. That if you take someone on board and you're unsure, check out the references. Ask to give the references a call. Sometimes they'll review. They'll have a policy. Send me a letter and I'll sign it. That sort of thing. A lot of the time, pick up the phone, see what they're like, and you'll find out some really good stuff.
Are there any particular countries great for hiring SEOs?
It depends what you're doing. The Philippines seems to be great for a lot of content writing, that sort of stuff. If you're looking for account execs and salespeople, Western Europe always comes up. Any countries with kind of a good technical infrastructure in their education, there's usually some good SEOs out there. The good thing, and one of the benefits we have of SEO, is got a really low bar for entry. You can get into SEO with YouTube videos. It's something you can start doing out of school if you wanted to in your free time. So the geography doesn't necessarily become too much of an issue whatsoever. There are some places where it's really difficult to recruit. Obviously, if you're a company over in the UK, you'll struggle recruiting in Japan. There's language issues, there's professional culture differences that you'll start to realize. There's all sorts of stuff you can like tread on any kind of mine, whatever you like. But yeah, if you're recruiting remotely, you should be fine.
Yeah, I used to work in recruitment as a marketing manager previously before SEO. So I was working at DePaul, which is like a middle vendor, and then also it was Cordon Group as well. It's
Okay.
a really hard industry, right?
Yeah,
Like,
it's very competitive. It's very saturated. There's a lot of good ones. There's a lot of bad ones. It's different. I've done it. It's all I've known really. Since I left college back when I was like 17, 18, I went straight into recruitment. 11 years later, I'm still in recruitment. You see a lot of people come and go, a lot of businesses come and go. But yeah, it's tough, but it's good. It's fun.
is there anything else you wanted to cover before we go? Or anything you think like SEO should know about hiring that we haven't already covered?
Everything. It's such a broad process. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me. If you need guidance on your CV or maybe help prepping for an interview, I'm happy to help. But nothing in particular. It's always helpful to use a recruiter. Obviously, being a recruiter, that's what I would say. But from a business perspective, there's that barrier between you and the direct candidate market, which I think immediately adds value. And from a candidate perspective, to have someone to help. Sometimes you don't want to negotiate directly with your manager about how much you're getting paid, or maybe the first offer wasn't quite right. The success rate of hiring people goes up with the use of recruiters.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So thanks so much for watching. If you want to get a free SEO strategy session, feel free to book that in. Links inside the comments and description. We'll basically build you a custom tailored SEO game plan live on the call. We'll answer any questions you have one-to-one, and you'll discover the secrets of link building plus how to outrank your competitors. Feel free to book that in. Bye-bye.